Hello everyone, today we're going to learn how to make a basic beanie, and this is the beanie that we're going to learn to make, and I'm calling it basic because this entire beanie goes from just one simple stitch. It's a double stitch from the very top to the very bottom. The only thing you're going to have to learn how to do, or the only crocheting terms you're going to have to know really, are double stitch. We're going to double stitch, we're going to slip stitch, and we're going to chain stitch. So those are three of the first things that you're going to learn. So beginners, definitely this is the video for you. This beanie is a youth beanie. It fits my 8-year-old daughter perfectly, so it fit a small woman or an average size young girl. I'm also going to show you how to make this little pom-pom at the top. Of course, with beanies now, the cute thing or the trendy thing to do is create a big flower or something to go down here, which we could do, but then it wouldn't be so much the beginner. So I am going to show you how to make this cutesy little pom-pom, which is very much a beginner thing to try to do. We're going to actually, in this video, I'm going to be showing you this particular pattern, and this pattern, like I said, fits a youth size girl. But the beanie that I'm going to make using the same skein of yarn, got what I have left over from my beanie right here, and that's what I'm going to use. That's going to be a beanie about the size to fit a little baby. So we're talking maybe 6 months old, maybe 6 to 9 months, depending on the circumference of the head. The only difference in this beanie and the baby beanie that I'm going to be doing is going to be the size of your needle. I really didn't understand it till recently what a big difference that needle size made, but if you see, this chunky beanie is really what's in style right now. So it has the big gaping holes in it, and that's what everybody likes. And so to create this beanie for the youth, I actually used this really big needle, and I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. It wasn't very expensive, but I think it's a Q. I really can't remember, and it's not written on it, which is kind of strange, but I believe that it's a Q, just a big red one. If you're going to Hobby Lobby, I think that they normally are color-coded regardless of where you're buying that. So try to find the biggest possible needle that you can. And the Q was from the top all the way to right here, and you can see the very bottom of it is a little bit tighter, and so on the very bottom of this beanie I used this end hook. So these are the two hooks that I used to create the beanie for our youth girl. Now, using that exact same pattern, I'm going to create a beanie for a baby, and the big beanie option that I'm going to use is the N, and then on the very bottom of the lip I'm going to bring in my L. So I'm going to use these two needles to create my beanie for the little baby. We'll see how that works. I'm going to set this aside. So remember, this is their end product. This is what we're going for. This is just an old gold color. I think it's called Vegas Gold. The yarn that I'm using is something that I picked up at Walmart. It's really easy to come by. It's called, this is Lion brand, Hometown USA. I have no real preference for this yarn. I do like it that it's a bulky yarn, and that seems to be what people are enjoying right now. I chose this particular kind of yarn, and here's a whole skein of it if you want to see in a red. I chose this because it's bulky, but it's not fuzzy. And I think that it's easier for beginning crocheters to see their stitches when they're looking if there's not a lot of extra fibers competing with what your eye's trying to see. And so I did choose this yarn particularly for that purpose, so we can actually see our stitches. So let's get started, and we're going to make a beanie for a little baby. We're going to bring our yarn out, and here's the yarn that I'm going to use, and it's just what's left over after I made the other hat, and I think that we have plenty of it here for the beanie for the little baby. I'm going to use my bigger hook option to start with, and like I said, this is an N. It's a size N hook, and we're going to just take the end of our yarn and create our slip knot. Now, everyone does this differently. You just find a way that's good for you. I always just turn it into a pretzel, then I feed through the back and loop my thread. Maybe I loop my thread and bring it through, and then you just pull that and you have your slip stitch, and that's how I'm going to start. So holding your yarn is something that beginners struggle with, just like myself. I'm just figuring out how to do all of these things too, and so I have found that I enjoy holding my yarn like so. and that allows me to pull and tug with this hand when I see need to do that. And then of course my right hand is where I'm going. Obviously I'm right-handed, so what I'm showing you is going to be more for the right-handed crocheter. And the first thing we're going to do is a chain stitch. We're going to create 4 chain stitches, and those 4 stitches are real simple. To do a chain stitch, you just grab your yarn and pull through that slip knot that you had done, and that's 1 chain stitch. Pretty simple. Grab your yarn again, 2, 3, 4, and now I have a chain of 4, and that's exactly what I wanted. Anytime you're going to crochet in the round, you're going to start with a chain, and then you're going to connect the end of your chain with the beginning of where you started. And so this is called a slip stitch. We're going to go right back through the very beginning, okay? So you come up here and you find where your very first stitch was, and just stick your needle through. And sometimes working with the bigger needles can be difficult with that if you pull it too tightly, so be careful not to pull too tight. And you're going to yarn over, or grab your yarn and just drag it through both of those loops. And in doing that, you've slipped those right together. So you just created a slip stitch. And see right here, there's a hole. So you have your chain, and basically you've created a little ring. And you're going to be feeding 6 double crochets down into the middle of that ring. So the first thing we're going to do is chain 2 more, and by chaining 2 more, you're giving yourself enough leeway to get up where you want to start. That's the height you want to start from. And now we're going to create a double stitch. And so double stitch is pretty easy. I always think of it this way. With the double stitch, you're going to do it twice, and so you're going to yarn over twice, and then you're going to pull it through the eye of the needle twice. And so I'm going to yarn this, stick it through the hole in the middle, grab my yarn on the other side, and now you see I have 3 loops on my needle. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to drag my yarn through the first 2, that's 1, and then I'm going to drag my yarn through the second 2, and that's 2, double stitch. So we're going to grab our yarn and go through the middle again, grab and back through, and in doing that you have 3 loops on your needle, 3 loops on your needle right there. So grab the yarn, take it through 2, and grab and go again. So that's 2 double stitches that you've done, 1, 2. And you're going to do a total of 6 double stitches down into the middle of that very same hole. Make sure you're feeding everything down in the middle of the ring you made with your chain. So I've done 2, and now I'm just going to do 4 more. Feel free to pause the video and go back or rewind if you should need to. I'm not very fast, so I don't think you're going to have trouble keeping up with me, but if you should, just pause and come back. So here's my 3rd stitch. I'm going to go down and get it. I drag through 2, and I'm done. On to my 4th. Yarn over in it, yarn over, done. Here's my 5th double crochet into the circle, and the tail I'm just going to put behind me. And here's my 6th double crochet. Now, when I get to the end of those 6 double crochets, what I can see is that I'm trying to build a circle, and I'm almost there, okay? See how that works? If you count those, you can see that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then here's where we started our initial chain. I'm going to actually slip stitch into that chain. Now there are many ways to do it. For this particular beanie, we're not going to be very picky. Instead of trying to go into these stitches, I am literally just going to go into the first big open stitch and grab my yarn and drag it through both of those. And when I do that, you can see that I have created for myself a circle. And that's what I want. I want that circle. So here's the circle, and that's going to be the very top of my beanie hat, and then we're going to work down from there. Okay? So once you create the circle, I need to do 2 chains up, 1 chain, 2 chains. And now I'm going to start creating my beanie all the way around. This was the first row. For the second row, I'm going to have double stitch in each of my big stitches. And you're asking, well, what's a big stitch? If you're looking at this bulky yarn and not at fuzzy yarn, you can see how I'm pulling apart these stitches, and it actually looks like a wagon wheel. Well, each of those holes right there is where I'm going to be creating stitched going in, okay? And if you look, you're going to have three threads of yarn that is going to support each of those stitches. And so that is what we're going to be calling, a stitch. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 double crochets in each one of those open stitches. You see the big stitches where my thumb's going? I'm going to create 2 double crochets in each one of those, and by putting 2, that means I'm trying to increase the size of my circle. Okay, just trying to increase the size of my circle. So I did 1 double crochet in each to make the 6 wheel, and now let's do 2 into each hole. Now my 2 chains actually counts as a double crochet because it takes up room, and anytime you take up room with a pattern, you have to allot for that. So we'll pretend that's my first double crochet into this stitch, and I'm going to go back into the same hole I'm starting from and create my second double crochet. There we go. So now I'm done with that first stitch. I find my second stitch, which is the big hole right there, and I'm going to create 2 double crochet stitches right there into that same hole. 1, 2, right into the same hole. See how I did that? Pretty good. Now I'm going to find my next hole, that open stitch, and I'm going to put 2 double crochets right down in there. There's 1 and there's 2. See how this is working? And it's getting bigger. And I'm going to put 2 double crochets. 1, 2. Now I'm going to put 2 more double crochets if I find my next stitch. And sometimes, quite honestly, you just have to stop and spread things out to find the stitch you're looking for. So right there's the stitch I want. 1, 2. That's my double crochet. Another open stitch. 1, 2. And then I'm thinking, how far am I going to have to go here? Well, if you look at my round right now, you can tell very clearly when you're looking at this that there's a hole right there. There's a gaping hole right there, and so I can tell that I'm going to need to put 2 more double crochets in the next stitch, and then my circle will be complete and I'll be done with that row. Now if I weren't using super bulky yarn and I weren't doing a double crochet, I probably would have marked where I started. Sometimes it's hard to tell where you start and end, but with this particular one, and since we are working on a beginner level here, I thought that with the big yarn we can probably tell pretty clearly where we're ending. And there again, if you're using something that's fuzzy, it does create a little bit more of a learning curve with being able to see your stitches and know exactly where you are and what you're doing. So just be careful with your stitches when you're starting. Oops. Oh, I messed that one up. And if you mess up, that's fine. Just put your hook back in and take it back out again. Let's see, where am I going in? I did 1, I like 1 more, and I'll be done. Boom, I'm done. Okay, so I have my circle done. I'm going to want to grab this stitch right here and slip stitch, and now I'm finished with my circle. See? So it's a flat circle, and that's exactly what I want for the time being. And for the Beanie Baby, I'm going to come out 1 more row, row 3. We're going to increase again, which means we're going to make it just a little bit bigger around, not too big around, or our hat will be too big for a baby, obviously. But the first row was the 6 double crochets into the center. The second row, we put 2 double crochets into each open stitch. And now for the third row round, we're going to change the rules a little bit. First of all, we're going to chain 2 up, and that just gives us room to do our double crochet so it's not pulling on our next row. So 2 chains up, 2 chains up. And then we're going to alternate. We're going to do 2 double crochets in 1 open stitch, and in the next open stitch we're just going to do 1. And then we're going to do 2 double crochets and then 1. So we'll create a pattern of increase. So 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. And we'll do that until we get all the way back around to where we started. Okay? So remember that when you chain 2 up, that actually counts as a double crochet, and so we're going to go into that same stitch again, pulling back out, and so now we have 2 double crochets into that stitch, and our next open stitch we want to simply put 1 double crochet. We're doing this because it's really better if you increase gradually and not have big increases in the size of something. It just creates a more tailored look. And so I have 2, 1, and to make true to my pattern, then in my next open stitch there, the hole, I'm going to be able to put 2 double crochets, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, and my next open hole I'll put 1 double crochet. Notice I'm still creating the pattern. 2, 1, 2, and so that was 1. Here's 2 double crochets in this spot. 1, 2, and here's 1 double crochet. Now, if you're like me and you get interrupted about 100 times every time you're trying to do something, it's going to be important that you know how to drop this and come back to it and know where you are. And again, this is for beginners. So if you're looking at this beginners, I'd recommend you just spread this out right now and actually study what you're doing. Here, I can clearly see that I have 4 threads going down in that first stitch, so that was 2 double crochets because a double crochet has 2 loops apiece. And here I only have 1. That's where my pattern is, 2, 1. My next stitch, you see I have 2 double crochets, and in my next stitch I only have 1, and then I have 2 double crochets, and then I have 1. And so if I'm going to continue with my pattern, then my next open stitch would need 2 double crochets. So if you do have to walk away from this, it's not something that's scary to pick back up, which is a good thing, because when you have kids and a husband and a dog walking around, you get stopped quite frequently actually. So let me go back in. The last one was 1, and so my next one will be 2 double crochets, 1, 2 double crochets, and then a single. And continuing our pattern, we'll do 2 double crochets, and then a single. Continuing our pattern, we open up and find that stitch. We'll do 2 double crochets, 1, 2 double crochets, and then a single. There we are. 2 double crochets, and then a single. Or do we need a single? Yes, I do need a single. 1 single right there, and then I've ended my pattern. I'm out of stitches, and so I'll simply stick my hook in that very first chain we did, slip stitch it over, and you can see I have my circle. And you noticed mine started curling up. That's going to happen. You just fold it right back down. This is, I have my circle. This is actually where I'm going to end